Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me comic creator and drummer for Pioneer, abnormally Ben Cook, who is the creator of Apex. So, welcome to the show because you got a Kickstarter going on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited because Apex seems like a simple idea, but there's a lot of shit going on in this comic. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There's a lot of questions that are being raised about humanity, and also it happens to be in black and white, which is also very cool because black and white comics are fascinating. So I think the best place to start is what is Apex and what is the basic premise for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
Sure. Apex takes place in about 100 years in the future. And it takes place in a city that's built on a pile of garbage. If you think like in 100 years, we have this great Pacific garbage patch that's kind of floating around the ocean, right? And I had this thought that like eventually, I was listening to this TED talk, I think, and this guy was like, eventually, if we don't take care of this, it's going to crash into the Southeast Asian coast, and we're going to have a serious problem. And of course, because I'm a writer, I'm also like kind of a sociopath. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. So I thought about like, what if people built a city on this sort of trash heap that smashed into Asia? And you know, from there, I decided to inject a character that I come up with in college, and it just kind of built from there. So the whole idea is that at this period where humanity's in decline and the civilization is collapsing, um, there's this girl who uh, her favorite food is people, and she's slowly discovering that she's not actually a human being. She looks kind of like a human, but she's not really. She's got sharp teeth. She's got night vision. She's got a neurotoxin that paralyzes her victim like a spider, and she's purely carnivorous. She only eats meat, and humans are favorite food. And so it kind of starts there, but it's really a nature versus nurture story. So
Yeah,
we're
there's a
watching,
lot to unpack there, and
yeah,
obviously, sort of, and I'm going to take a stab at it.
sure,
This is taking it, and I think the basic premise of this sort of came from the idea of where humanity is going, what
mm,
happens with evolution and humanity.
right,
Obviously, evolution, I mean, to even talk further about this, from my understanding, is that humans have also left Earth at this point as well. So,
yes.
to some degree, and so humankind as an entity maybe not be completely extinct, but Earth is becoming very much a fight or die type of situation per se.
And
And
yeah, and
yeah,
there is a colony on Mars that's being advertised as a vacation spot. Um, but this is after the world's been devastated. There's been a series of proxy wars that have been kind of financed by corporate entities that have turned most places into sort of resource hubs rather than places for people to live and
G
thrive.
Gundam,
And
G Gundam essentially.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there was a fairly large war that resulted in a nuclear holocaust. But I haven't gotten into that in the story yet. That's like sort of one of the I kind of like there's a little line in the first issue that mentions it, but it's just kind of like, planting a seed kind of thing. But there's a lot of devastation, and that's why they built a city on this garbage patch was like, these refugees were like, there's nowhere to go. Let's go to one place where no one's going to try and steal anything from us.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to get because that sets the tone in many ways for this entire story, where we have sort of in the first, I think, 10 pages, we get a real quick history of what's happened and how the entire world is messed up and how people have sort of evolved and that people are now coming into this area where this girl is not really a human. Her favorite snack slash food, like what she likes to eat, is people. And well, people also, she's in what I guess is called Jungle City.
It's Sector J, but yeah, they call it the jungle.
Yeah, so Sector J, it's called the jungle. She loves it there, but it's a weird place because there's danger lurking around. There's sort of a lack of, I guess, government to some degree. People are left to fend for themselves. There's like anything is a commodity, and the commodity goes down as the night goes on. And so that's
Yes.
also what's going on with this. And well, she is in a weird position where she's sort of a protector of her sector to some degree against
Somewhat,
people who
yeah.
are going after weaker people, yet she's also very much a predator at the same time. And so it's a very weird situation because if she's also a protector, that means that she's only preying on certain entities.
That's correct.
And
Yeah.
so what was that like, setting that up and setting those rules up? Because we haven't gotten into those rules per se yet, but it's sort of implied. And I don't know
Yeah.
if we're gonna know exactly what her rules are on what she hunts
Um,
and what she doesn't hunt.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to discover that for myself, actually. The kind of the way that I go about writing characters in particular, I like to build a world and then I put characters in it, and then I just like to see how they mess around in there. Um, and with Mohini, because she's so um, outside of the norm. I mean, it I'm leaving myself just room for anything to happen. So I don't know if she's going to be rooted for or hated by the time this is over. I'm kind of excited to find out for myself. She does have a moral compass though, and like in future issues, like I have the first 5 issues sort of mapped out, right? And she has a history. She has a background. She was raised by somebody, and they gave her a moral compass and helped her understand that there is a right and wrong. So she's not a psycho, but she has these urges and this hunger that is hard to ignore. And so
And
she's
to dive
trying to use it for good, but it's not an easy task.
and to even dive further, because there is a bunch of other stuff that sort of also gives her character. And this is her for those who are interested. And
Yeah.
right from
Shout
this.
out to Clovis Badabola for the art, by the way, because he's amazing. He did an amazing job on the art.
And so I happen to love the way she looks. It's very much J. Scott Campbell Storm. I don't know. There's a particular
Yeah.
cover that J. Scott Campbell did, and Storm has a mohawk and
Yep.
looks that way and looks very much BDSM. She works in a fetish club. Obviously, we get that. So we get that entire thing. Obviously,
Yep.
she's used to that rough and tough environment, used to bar
Hmm.
life, used to nightclub environment, which suits her character. And so, what was that like, building all that into her character and how she
Uh,
looked? Because it definitely adds to it. It adds so much to her character that she's not this innocent thing. I mean, she's works at a fetish club, so
yeah, she's not a victim of her circumstances at all.
like I
She's
love the fact that we get this badass woman type of
mm,
character, and that she knows how to handle herself, and that she's used to the nightlife, and she's used to that dark side of things that aren't so daisy fresh. It's nice to see it.
yeah, totally. Yeah, that was intentional. I worked in restaurants for years. I was a chef for like I don't know, over 10 years, pushing 15. And I worked for all different types of places. So I worked for fine dining restaurants. I also worked for greasy spoons and sports bars, all that kind of stuff. And you encounter a lot of really interesting people when you work in the restaurant business. A lot of artistic people, a lot of creative people, because the hours are flexible. You kind of you mingle with a lot of you know unique individuals. And I was also kind of into the sort of goth alt scene back in college and stuff. So like I've been to fetish bars, I've been to places where like I remember there's a place here in Toronto called the Reverb that no longer exists, but I remember the first time I went in there, I was with a girl I was dating at the time, and we were big into the goth scene at the time. And we walk up the stairs, and the guy says it's $20 cover, but you get $2 off for every tattoo or piercing. And I was like, this is my kind of place. I don't have any tattoos or piercings, but I'll totally pay $20 to go get into a place that has that kind of vibe. So I walk in, and the first thing I see, there's like a pillar and there's a bar at the far end. And like right in front of the pillar is a guy, he's got to be in his 60s and nothing but a black leather thong, just going nuts to the music, right? And I was like, I love this. This feels so right. And that place was sort of like the basis for Transgression, the fetish bar in the comic. Mohini works there basically because it's the only place she can get by without people looking at her like she's a weirdo. I mean, she can't be a barista. She's got cat eyes and razor sharp teeth. So like the fetish bar is kind of the only place where she can work, and people walk up to her and go, "Man, nice, that looks awesome. Like, where'd you get your work done?" And it's because it's the future, there's like biotech, so it's not that out of the realm of possibility. But the fact that she lives in Sector J and works at a fetish club, no one really notices. It's kind of a forgettable job, so it's an advantage to her.
And to even talk about her, because obviously she does have cat-like eyes. Obviously, she's got, agility is built
Hmm.
into her, razor sharp teeth. She's faster,
Hmm.
stronger than most people around her and most things around her. I mean, I
Yep.
say things at this point because we don't know what's out there exactly in this world, and we
Not
don't
yet.
know what modifications people have. Obviously, you said biotech's in there. Obviously,
Hmm.
cyberpunk as a whole, as an entire entity, is such a fascinating topic right now in the
Correct. Yeah.
entire comic world, and cyberpunk has done a lot of good things for that. Maybe
100%.
Keanu Reeves has also pushed that a little bit too. I don't know. He might have a part in that game. God forbid. But anyhow, anyhow, it's such a bad joke. It's such a bad joke. But even this idea that like she has all of these traits that make her, adept. And so even what was that process of picking things? Because obviously, you look at nature. There's a bunch of different things. I used to have a cat, and my cat was a killer, and
Right.
she would bite and hunt and like prey and then like hide in the shadows and wait to find something, and she'd almost track something down to where it lived, and she
Right.
would kill her, and then she would like almost sometimes play with what she did with because cats have things that paralyze in the nape, and so what
Right.
was that like figuring out all that stuff and figuring out all of her traits because it is super interesting, especially when she gets into fights and when she gets into the fight that kind of sets this entire issue off.
Right. Well, the thing for me is like I the basis for the story is the character, right? But once I started building, I realized the character and like so I started studying a lot of evolution to kind of get my head around what I wanted Mohini to be and like what would work and what wouldn't work. Um, and I realized that the organism and the environment are the same thing. So I once I realized that, I kind of took what I had of Mohini and I just kind of put it on the sidelines for a moment and I focused on building Cess, because that environment is going to make Mohini who she is. So it's a dark, it's sort of seedy. There you can kind of buy anything you can possibly imagine there. It's all for sale, and that's going to make you hard. That's going to make you callous. You're going to see people as um, commodities at best and obstacles at worst. So um, once that's in your mind, then you can start kind of like working out how does this person hunt? What traits do they need to be successful in this environment? So because this place is basically she's in basically a walled prison. That's what Sector J is. So because of that, power systems don't work great. There's not exactly like a law enforcement. They're more like keeping people in, not protecting and serving. So so she's going to hunt at night, and the bar job helps with that because she has an alibi when she's out. So obviously you got to give her night vision, and with that there's a heightened sense of smell. And but the one thing I needed was because she's going to run into things that are bigger and tougher than her, and humans are innately suited to adapt. We're very, very capable of figuring out how to solve problems. So if you're going to take that kind of creature down, if you're going to be well suited to that, then what you got to be able to do is make them useless. And so I gave her a neurotoxin that paralyzes. But the cool thing about it was I had a vision for what this was going to be. And then when I gave it to Clovis, my artist, he when we got to the last few pages of the comic, when the real fight scene breaks out, um, I always pictured it as like a needle that protrudes, sort of like Assassin's Creed style. But when he drew it, I didn't have that in my description because it was in my head. I didn't think about it. And he was like, I drew it as veins. I hope that makes sense. Like they're basically like these sort of like prehensile. sort of tubes that come out and like wrap around the neck and the face of the enemy, and I was like, that is so much cooler than what I had.
So
So
what is that like? Because this is very interesting because I haven't read
yeah.
the comic yet. And if I
Mm,
do it and the project I want to do, at least the first one I want to do, I'm going to be drawing it myself. And I am not a
okay.
good artist, and that's kind of the joke of it. And it's going to be funny when
Good
people
luck,
ask
man.
why. It's going to be great. And I don't want to give away too much because somebody's going to steal
Sure.
it and make a lot of money doing what I want to do. But anyhow, the idea is that when you are the writer and you give something to your artist, you can describe certain things in a comic scene. Meaning that say, hey, there's a city in the background, and
Yep.
obviously your artist can't draw a farmhouse in that position.
Right.
But like when you have an idea in your head, but then your artist does something like, oh man, I would have never thought about that, and that you gave
Yeah.
them free reign. Because when I get commissions done by artists, I say, hey, here's
Hmm.
my basic concept, and this is what I want. I want something to look like Firefighter Sexy Samantha, and the people who know Zenoscope know exactly what I'm referring to. And then I
Right.
let the artist do whatever he wants to do beyond that. And he did a
Sure.
phenomenal job, and it's a great piece. But the point is that what is that like for you? Because obviously, an artist is going to read what you have in your script and say, I know exactly how to make this work and look awesome to enhance what you as a writer want.
Right. Well, I when I
And even to
uh
let it go and trust your artist, because that's a whole different thing to trust somebody with your baby.
trust is key. So I actually watch I suggest to everybody that's watching this, if you're nervous, if you're a writer and you're nervous about like the dynamic with the artist or what you're looking for out of an artist, if you've
Have a
never
few
done this
shots of
before.
whiskey before you ask them. Seriously.
Yeah, but there's actually a video on YouTube that Image Comics put together that's about like how to find the right artist for your project. And I found it very helpful. I did it after the fact, after I'd already found Clovis, but it just kind of spoke to all the things that I already kind of either knew when I found him or learned through the process. And I'm a collaborative person. So I know a lot of writers that are very, and I don't mean this in any negative way, but they're dictatorial. They like things to be exactly to the vision that they expect. I have a good sense of the plot and the dialogue and the characters, but in terms of the aesthetic, I'm not an artist. And I need to rely on someone who's been doing this for a living, just like I've been writing for a living. And so I have absolutely no problem with someone kind of making suggestions or pushing back or just drawing something and being like, what do you think of this? And Clovis is really easy to work with in that regard because he has a lot of really great ideas, and he'll explain. He never says no, but he will explain why something might be difficult or why it might not work on the page, and that makes it easier for me to understand things because I'm not an expert on this.
And I
Um,
would imagine that sometimes he's correct and sometimes you might be correct on something. And
Yeah,
that,
yeah, we have discussions, and sometimes I end up making my case, and he goes, "Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way." And there are times where he's like, "Yeah, if we do it that way, then we won't be able to do this." And I'm like, "Oh, that's yeah, true." Like a perfect example is we have a double page spread, and I when I wrote it, and when my friend Chuck Pino edited it, and when I gave it to other artists or gave it to fellow writer friends, they all said, that's not going to work. It's really difficult. It's a huge risk. And I knew it. But if you're trying to do a double page with panels so that it reads left to right across two pages rather than just across one to the next, it's extremely difficult to pull off. And if you do it wrong, it sucks. And I genuinely hope I pulled it off. If I didn't, I'm going to find out. But it was just kind of one of those things where I wanted to roll the dice on it. And when we were talking about it, he was pointing out the pitfalls in it, and he was like, and I said, "Is there any way that we can make this work, or should I just revise?" And he said, "We'll figure it out." And he made it happen. But it required a conversation. So if I had just been like, "We're doing it, and I don't care, you need to figure it out," it would have created a really difficult dynamic. And the better your artist, this is my experience at least, the better your artist, the more influence they want to have because they know what they're doing, right? And
I
like
don't know
my
about that on
confidence,
commissions because I let my guy do what he wanted to do. It's Elias
right?
Jesus, and boom, just this is what I want. Do whatever you want. I gave him the basic blueprint of it, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for firefighter, sexy Samantha. Van Helsing style, and boom, he did the cover, the original cover on it. And I said,
Nice.
hey man, you do your thing, because I
Yeah,
trust somebody when they're a professional to do what they know how to do better
that's
than
the
I
thing.
dictate.
Yeah.
I give artists complete freedom when I'm getting commissions and remarks. I don't instruct anybody because I know nothing about art. And every time I do that and I say, hey, here I got my basic concept and you run with it, they tend to do great with it because I find that all I need to give an artist is an idea
Yeah.
and boundaries. That's all I need to do, and it's up to them to fill the page.
Yep, exactly. And it's the same, like, and I'm the same as a writer, where if like Clovis has ideas and he's like, I'm not sure, like I have this idea, what do you think? And I will write around his concept because that's my strength. So it's just about knowing what you know, right? And as a musician, that helps as well because like I'm a drummer, so I had to make my peace very early in my musical career and just accept that like no one's buying my solo album. The best I'm going to do is collaborate with really talented musicians. So if I want to do that, then I need to be a really talented drummer and I need to be able to listen and try and help bring someone else's vision to life. And so when I'm working with an artist, I'm like, they're the drummer. But just like drums, and especially with a black and white comic. So if a drummer goes off beat, like if a guitarist misses a note or goes off beat slightly, or the bass player kind of misses a little fill, no one really notices. But if the drummer misses, the whole crowd feels it and the whole band knows, and it ruins the vibe completely. So like precision is so important for a drummer. And it's the same with an artist. Like if one of those panels is slightly off, it ruins the page. So they have to have like you have to give them the latitude to kind of like allow that to happen on its own and create it. You know what I
And,
mean? And
and to you mentioned something super interesting because obviously I don't know much about music, and I like music. I listen to music. I enjoy music. Music is super important in a variety of ways. I'm big
mhm,
into TV and anime right now. I'm a big like otaku fan. I'm watching a lot of more TV now. A lot of good stuff. I mean, I'm in the middle of Yellowstone, and that music is so good, and it's so country music, and it's amazing, and
right.
is really important to the scene. And
Hmm.
obviously, I think black and white comics are similar to that, where you notice everything in a black and white comic, and
Yeah.
that black and white comics can only be one of two things: they're either really good or they suck. You don't
Yep.
have a choice in the matter, and that's why
Yeah.
people don't want to sometimes do black and white, because you could have a comic that is okay, but if the color palette is right and it's really amazing color and it's super saturated, it can take a good comic and make it above good.
Right.
Versus if you have a black and white comic, you don't have color per se. Or if you
Yep.
have a noir or neo noir type of thing, like Sin City is in black and white, but that red spots or pull
Yep.
off does that really well, where it's this idea where that helps to elevate and cover mistakes. And so, what made
Totally.
you want to do a black and white comic? Because it gives a whole different vibe to the entire.
Uh, Yeah, so there's two things. First of all, I like to take chances. So as soon as when I said I want to try and do this in black and white, the first reason I wanted to do it was because it's cheaper. I'm just going to be honest. It's not just that I don't have to pay a colorist; it's that I don't have to pay for color printing. So the first time I'm ever going to write a comic or put something out into the world, I'm like, I want to keep this as simple as possible, keep as few moving parts as I can, so that like I can execute on a level that I want to build a fan base. That's kind of the goal with this, right? So I want to keep the product simple so that if people enjoy it, then I can make more. Um, but once I started talking about black and white, all of my creator friends were like, "Black and white, man, that's tough. Like it has to be really good." And I was like, and I have this little switch that flicks in my brain when people say that might be hard, and I'm like, I'm doing it now. So like I just kind of went all in and I was like, I'm gonna find a good noir comic artist and I'm gonna build it with that aesthetic. But as it progressed and I started looking for an artist, I realized black and white not just it doesn't just work for the aesthetic, but it works for the character because Mohini is a predator. And I don't know if you know this, but most really good predators don't have color vision. It helps enhance contrast so that they can see things in the dark better. Like even our night vision as humans is in black and white for the most part. So, and most humans now don't know that because we don't actually experience the dark, like legitimately the dark, because we usually live in well lit areas. But anybody who lives in the boonies or like travels out and goes camping and stuff, you know that when it's really dark
Like
out and there's
Yellowstone.
no
You live in Montana.
right, right, exactly. Like if you're out there and the stars are like behind the clouds and there's no moon, you can see, but you can't see everything. Do you know what I mean? And so I kind of wanted to build on that because I like the idea that Mohini could only see what was important, like it would be highlighted, and then the idea was to go with a Sin City aesthetic, where we have the one color, and that will help kind of like highlight whatever Mohini's focused on and whatever she's looking at. But with the first issue, I wanted to try black and white, but I might as well say this now. The stretch goal for this campaign is to add that color. So if we reach our goal and go past it, I'm adding color to it,
So when
but
you
only
add
one.
color, are you gonna go full color? Are you gonna go Sin City color,
I'm
or
just going to go one color, just one.
and so is
It's
it
going to be
what color?
purple.
Did you want to reveal what color that's gonna be? Because that's gonna be super interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be purple. So if you look up Apex, like the variant cover and the main cover on Facebook or on Instagram, I have them all over the place there. They both have a purple vibe to them, and I just like the color purple, but it also has to do with plot stuff. So I don't want to give too much away, but it gets revealed why purple is the color as the story progresses.
Yeah, no. It's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be cool to have a book that definitely goes that way. I mean, I like noir as an entity. I like neo noir as well. Two of my favorite shows
Mhm.
are Afro Samurai and Minglobox, and they are done very much in those styles.
Afro Samurai is amazing. It's like one of the yeah, I it changed the way that I think about animation, to be honest, when I watched it.
So it's a very cool show what they did with it, and
Yeah,
it's not black and white, but it's definitely filtered in a certain way. And then Minglobox, you haven't seen it, is filtered the same way.
I have not, but
And
I'll check it out.
Minglobox, just for those who don't know, just to throw it out there, it was done in I think 2019 animation style. They ran it through a filter, unsaturated part of the color, to give an old school, so it's got like more like a 2003 vibe to it with really
Right.
high quality anime where you get this really weird blend where you get like the best of both worlds and you get like super cool saturation and it
That's
almost has
brilliant.
a black and white feel to it, which is crazy. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
so
awesome.
respectful because it's a 50-year anniversary to Ashita no Joe, which is a
Oh,
boxing anime. So I know all about this. But anyway, we're not talking about Mingla.
yeah.
That's a whole different
That's okay.
a whole different day. It's better than Mike Tyson boxing back in the 70s. Anyhow, so even to go further, because with Mohini, we get a lot of cool stuff that happens. We get some funny moments with her because she gets into a fight with somebody. She kills this person. She sort of tortures him because she wants to know who's hunting her. And then
Hmm.
after she kills him, she says, "Well, why waste good food?" and sort of saves the food, which I thought
Yeah,
was really funny and dark and very humorous in the circumstance. And even though she was like, the food isn't that good and it doesn't taste that great, which I also
yeah,
thought was very funny, but like she kind of neatly packs it up into her refrigerator. So
she does.
obviously we get that. We get the fact that she likes to torture her prey sometimes and that she's also trying to protect herself. And it really creates this entire situation where we get this idea of nature versus nurture, which is what this book is starting to deal with and unfolding. And
Yeah,
it's a really interesting concept because she is actively trying to get information from this guy, but she's also eliminating a threat and proactively acting in her self interest to protect herself and her species and to not be hunted by something else. And so it really is that debate because from a nature standpoint, I think a creature logically would want to eliminate a threat to it.
correct.
But but being nurtured also can go that way too. And we also get a bunch of traits that conflict with each other and get sort of I don't really yeah, they conflict with each other, I think is the word. So what
They
was that
definitely
like?
do.
And what is this debate? Because it's a much bigger topic in this
Sure.
entire thing.
So the first thing, just to give a little teaser about where the story is going, the first thing to understand is like you're not watching like a mother panther expertly tracking her prey. That's not what you're seeing. What you're seeing is a cub who's figuring out how to pounce. She's not like experienced with it. She's fairly new. She's only in her 20s and she only has had this hunger for a short time. So um, she's not she's not fully aware of what kind of can of worms she's cracking open in this first issue. But you kind of get a sense of it through the conversation that she has with her antagonist. The advantage that she has is that she she doesn't want. So think about it this way: um, the wolf needs the deer, right? So as much as the wolf controls the deer and dominates it, uh, and they would eat all the deer if they could. If they were to do so, the wolf ceases to exist. So Mo is kind of struggling with this thing where she knows if she gets too far ahead of herself, she's going to get caught, and that's going to be the end of her. Possibly it could get worse because she's an anomaly. They're going to want to study her, right? And that could be very long and torturous. So she doesn't want that. But at the same time, she can't just you know eradicate humanity. They're her food. So she's got to find a way to kind of coexist and stay under the radar, the same way that a predatory cat stays within their territory, but they have their hunting grounds and they don't want to. A lion doesn't take down the entire herd of gazelle. That doesn't help because then they got to find a gazelle. What are they going to do then? So what she's trying to do is she's basically found a way to satisfy her hunger and also keep the ecosystem sort of in balance to some degree, but she doesn't realize how out of balance it is yet. She starts to discover this. So like one of her other little powers is that um, her sense of taste and smell is extremely heightened, and she can actually, when she eats the flesh of another animal, she can like pull memories from them and get a sense of who they are. Uh, and she does that with this person that she gets in conflict with in the first issue, where she kind of like reads him and she kind of casts back into his past and discovers that he was in a lab and they were testing on him and stuff. And this is just a taste of where we're headed. But it's not so much. I say nature versus nurture. It's really not that though. It's more nature versus uh, forced evolution. So it's more like Mohini's the organic form, just kind of homegrown, just happened by accident as a result of an environment. But there's something else going on where we're experimenting with people and splicing their DNA, and that's also happening. And it's sort of like a conflict between, can nature do it better than nature's offspring, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it raises questions, and
Hmm.
obviously there's a lot of stuff in play where it's this idea where we're getting a massive conflict, and now we're getting two things that one that is scientifically more or less developed versus what nature developed, and then they're in a conflict, but then humanity's in there, and then obviously I'd imagine higher ups are in there as
Hmm.
well, and we all know when that starts happening and we get mad scientists, or maybe we get scientists trying to figure out, hey, Earth is a disaster and we need to figure out how to survive the next generation. And a bunch of people are off the planet, but we need to evolve humanity so that at least something could happen. And if we wait, 10 million years, well, humans aren't going to be around anymore. But if we start forcing this now and cracking the code, well, maybe half humans are going to be around, or maybe more Mohinis are
Hmm.
going to be around. And then it raises all these questions on things. And let's be realistic. I'm not saying we're there in the real world, but there's
No, not yet.
definitely stuff like this is coming down in some way. There are companies like CRISPR, which is gene modification.
Yep.
And obviously, we do have celebrity babies and that type of stuff, and gene modification in embryos, and the entire discussion about stem cells and modifications to things and dealing with that. And if you don't think that's not being developed, whether for good or bad, I mean that.
Well,
And I'm not saying,
we don't even have to go that deep, to be honest with you. So, um, you mentioned cyberpunk. If you want to talk about cybernetics, um, what we're doing right now, I'm using my phone to talk to you, and you're using a computer to talk to me, I assume.
yeah,
Um, yeah, we're cybernetic beings now. This is an extension of me, right? This phone, and my Facebook
this is
profile,
a part of
and
it, without a doubt, no question
yeah,
about
yeah, and I used to, I'm a fairly political guy as well, and I used to say to people that, when I get in arguments about whether or not the society is free, I would say, if you really think you're free, stop paying your taxes. And I say the same thing about when people say we're not cybernetic. I'm like, if you really think you're not cybernetic, go a day without your phone. Go a month without your phone. Try and get a job without your phone. You know what I mean? Like, once it becomes an essential part, and I have a really like a really brilliant friend who he did his master's on the evolution of technology, and he said we've been cybernetic beings since we learned to harness fire. And he made a really good point. Like, once we have fire, once we know how to make it, can we live without it?
I don't
It
know.
kind of becomes it becomes as intrinsic to the story of humanity as our opposable thumbs and our ability to walk on two legs.
All I know is I got kicked off and suspended on Twitter for a week, and I was happy for that entire week. And the second I got back on Twitter, I was miserable again. And that's all I'm going to say is that while I still have my computer, I still had Facebook. Boy, was I happy that week because
I can't do Twitter, man. I don't understand. I don't understand what people get out of it.
it's crazy. The only advantageous is that I could connect with people for interviews and booking them. It is an interview tool for me. It is
Sure.
nothing but an interview tool for me, much like Instagram is for me. It is nothing but just a place for me to find people to interview.
Hmm.
Facebook, for the most part, is a distribution tool for me.
Right.
And when I got to spend it on Twitter, I was happy. So if you want to be happy, everybody, and you're on Twitter, get off Twitter. And I'm not saying that to be political. I'm saying because you're not seeing all the toxicity that is legitly on.
Right.
And it goes back to the cybernetic world where
Yeah.
if
And
you
that feeds into evolution as well. Like, I think about, like, we don't realize how much the digital realm is starting to change how we interact with each other. Like, it's affecting the real world in ways that we can't even
people,
comprehend.
it's crazy. Your dopamine is actually changed
Yep.
humanity, and
Yep.
it's crazy. And I'm not, there's a great wrestler, and I'm gonna get shit for it. Mike Quackenbush, and obviously the company Jakar is a mess if you're a wrestling fan. But he had an entire video for 20 minutes about your dopamine and social media. When I get a like on Facebook, changes the way I view the day. I also just sold something on eBay. That also changes the way I view my day as
Yep.
well. But
Dude, every time I get a backer on Kickstarter, I'm like, whoa, I'm amazing. You know what I mean?
one of those things has a real positive, non-artificial position. When you make a sale on eBay and you bought something
Sure.
for $10 and you sold for 30, that's a very positive dopamine position. But when you get a like on Facebook, that's great too, but that's an artificial dopamine, but they have the
Hollow.
exact same effect, except when you don't get 3 likes the next day on Facebook, your dopamine level goes and crashes, and it's a whole
Right.
epidemic. CoffeeZilla just did this entire thing with a professor who broke it down on all these fake gurus and like all these classes and stuff, and it plays on that, and it's a real issue.
It does.
And so
Yeah.
it's super, super interesting, the entire thing, and I'm actually trying to escape it, and it's very hard to. It's very hard to, but
I've learned, my take is, I don't want to escape. What I want to do is I want to evolve. I want to adapt to the new environment, and I want to make sure that I don't lose too much of myself in the process. So, like, did you know that like, for like most of human history, we dreamed in black and white? Um, Color dreaming became common. Like, it used to be occasional, and actually there's stories about, like old, sort of ancient stories about, people who would dream in color tended to be seers, or they were, regarded as like shamanistic by their community. But dreaming in color became more and more common in the 20th century, and it was because of the television. Because what our brain does is like when we imagine things or when we're dreaming, it's a different part of our brain that's being fired off than just the visual cortex. So the visual cortex works in color and in black and white. That's why our night vision is in black and white, because it's only working on certain retina. So prior to that, our ability to imagine was stuck in this black and white box. But as soon as you can see something happening on a screen that isn't real, your brain creates new neuron connections, and all of a sudden you can dream in color. We're doing this by accident. So like that was kind of all this stuff was like the inspiration for my story was like how many accidents happen before we create a new species that like, keeps us in check. You know what I mean?
We've done it. I mean, the moths during Britain's Great Revolution. It's a perfect
Right.
example of that, where
Yeah.
obviously we created an evolution and we did create a new species. You can make the argument because they started having offspring that have
Hmm.
black wings. And I think moths have wings from my understanding. Or if they don't,
They do.
everybody knows they're flappy things. I'm not too sure what we call them. But
I think they're wings. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what. I'm not a moth expert, clearly.
Sure.
Terrified of insects, so it'd be really weird if I was a moth expert. And I was
Fair
terrified.
enough.
But anyhow, my point is that their offspring started to have black wings and not white ones because
Right.
it was a whole new species, and that was an evolution. And that legitimately was because of an environmental circumstance, and I would make the argument that was an accident.
Absolutely.
And so
Yes.
it's super, super interesting. And obviously, there's a whole subsection of questions and thoughts that obviously your book, I think, doesn't necessarily answer because these are actually deep philosophical questions.
Yeah.
But they throw it out there, and I think it spins the wheels in people's heads. And obviously, people could just read this on the surface. You could open up your book and read it on the surface, and you'd be like, "Oh man, this is cool. It's a predator. Somebody's being hunted, and now they want to hunt their hunter, and now it's a game of hunter versus hunter and prey versus prey, and they're playing a
Right.
dangerous game here. And it's how far does everybody want to go, and everybody's playing dirty." You could read it like that, or you could read it deeper beneath it, or you could go further deeper, and then you could play on every single level if you so chose,
Right.
and or you could just read it as a massively violent, no punches holding back story, which is what it is too, because this book is not for a kid. It's not for.
No, it's not.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think if I had a 13-year-old, I would trust my 13-year-old with this book. You know,
It depends on the kid. I would have read this when I was a kid, and I probably would have got a lot out of it. But I was the kid that was reading The Watchmen and reading like hyper violent mythology from back in the day about
I was
gods
the kid.
raping people. Like
I was a very similar kid where I was watching things like Outlaw Star on Toonami when I was like 9. Not
right,
not the best 9-year-old show. I was from the age, I'm 28, where Toonami was on Saturday mornings, and you would go watch it before you went to chess class.
right.
So, which in reality, if you think about it, chess is a very violent game. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, chess requires a very callous mind, right? You have to be willing to sacrifice pieces. You can't care too much about, like, you can't get attached. You have to remain
You might
like
have to
kind
sacrifice
of,
your wife in chess,
yep,
but it's for the betterment of the kingdom.
that's right. Yeah. Well, it's definitely for the betterment of the king. There's no doubt about that.
I'm sure he's having a good time with the bishop anyway.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. They've been hanging out the whole time. Queen's giving them side eye.
But getting back to the point, I do want to make it crystal clear. This book is definitely not the type of book you want to hand your 5-year-old.
No, no, this is not for children. And yeah, like what I try and do as a writer is I try to play to every level to the best of my ability. So if you like a badass chick who kicks ass and takes names, you'll get that out of this. If you want something like a think piece that like explores like the nature of humanity and where we're headed if we don't course correct and if we continue down this road of decadence, you'll get that too. And if you like really pretty art and sort of like uh, you know something that grabs your attention, but in a sort of like holy shit way, that's there too. Um, I want to bring everybody in. I found that like the stories that really grabbed me, they grabbed all of my friends as well. And then our discussions were when I learned new things about that story that I hadn't seen before. And I want to do that with that. That's why I got into writing, was to like start a conversation, not to answer questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously this sort of, I think, turns those wheels and creates that. And I don't want to press too further
Thanks,
into
man.
this because obviously issue one is right now being funded. I think you
Hmm.
you are funded at this point. You're pretty
Nope.
close.
I'm at 82%.
So you're
Um,
pretty close.
Close enough. Yeah, we got 9 days left or 8 days left. So from what I've been told, it's pretty certain that it's going to get funded. Right now, our goal is to get to 100 backers, and when we get to 100 backers, I'm going to do a raffle from all 100, and I can't remember. I think it was the top three are going to have their likeness put in issue two, and that's going
So
to be
so
fun.
yeah.
So issue two is going to be it's going to take place mostly in Transgression, the fetish bar that Mohini works in. So we can put you wherever you like. We can put you in a gimp mask with a leash. We
They
can
put on
uh, we
a
can we
St.
can make
Andrew
you a
cross.
dominatrix. We can put you on. We can set you on fire. We can do whatever you want. Take your pick.
And so that's actually a new thing where there's stretch goals, but there's also this idea that every 50 backers or 100 backers, something is being either raffled off or pulled out of or being thrown into it, and that's very cool to
Yeah.
some degree. And
I'm
I think
fairly new at this, so like I'm just figuring this out. I'm basically taking cues from all the people that I know that have
a lot of
succeeded at
stuff
it.
is being experimented with, and we're going to talk about that in
Right.
a second. But I want to table that
Sure.
for the time being because I do want to get into the rewards because there's a lot of cool stuff, and obviously that's really awesome with the raffle, and I'm super stoked for it. And a lot of people are doing it. Brian Polino, who runs Lady Death and Calling Comics, does stuff like that
Hmm.
where he gives out art per a certain number of backers, and a variety of other people do that too. And so
Right.
it's super cool. But let's talk about rewards because obviously I want
Sure.
people to know what rewards are out there. So there's digital.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Of
digital
course.
or international is the key for most people. And I think
Yep.
digital is the king of everything. And I know you're fairly new to it, but there's been debates on this. And I've gotten
Mm.
into people who on this too. And we're on opposite sides of the fence, and they've all come to my side. But anyhow, obviously, there's also the physical standard.
Yep.
And then there's the variant by Matthew Whedon or Weldon.
Matthew Weldon, yeah. And he knocked it out of the park with that variant cover, man.
And
It's
so and
amazing.
so, how much is a physical just to get it out there? And what's the deal with the shipping? Because I'm always confused on that. 'Cause that's tricky.
Uh yeah, so it's $10 for the issue. And for shipping in the US, I believe it's 7 or 8 dollars. Internationally, I believe it's 15 to 20.
International
Just
is a bitch.
it's a
I,
bitch.
I run an
Yeah.
eBay business, and I do
Mm.
not ship international for a reason.
Yeah.
Because I
Uh
don't want to deal with it. I don't ship to Canada. I don't ship to Mexico. It is difficult. It's not a currency problem. That's the
right.
easy part. It is legitimately difficult to ship something
Right.
international. And so I don't do international. And if I ever run a Kickstarter, I'm not doing international. I refuse to.
Yeah, I mean I just decided to kind of throw everything at the wall and see what stuck with this first time because I'm just figuring out how to do this. But I try and be honest with myself when it comes to these things. So like when I chose to do international shipping, I was like, you know what? I'm probably going to lose some money, leave some money on the table with this. But the goal with the first issue is to build a fan base. So if I can do that internationally, I'll do it. I'll pull the trigger on it. And if they love it, then maybe the shipping price has to go up next time. But hopefully people will come with it. Whatever I can
And,
do.
and it's also very complicated with COVID at the moment with shipping
Oh
and
yeah.
it's complicated in the U.S. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the last 6 months, there's been two post office hikes.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with some of the Postal Service controversy, and yeah, it's not easy anywhere right now, but it seems like you guys are getting really rocked with just with delivery services in general.
And also, you're in Canada, and I'm going to give also people a piece of advice. Put it on your credit card. Don't put it on your debit card because debit cards will charge you 3%.
Right.
Credit cards, for the most part, won't charge you, or you should call up your credit card company and ask them. And I learned this the hard way, and I'll explain why this matters. So on a $10 issue, it's really not that expensive. It's like 30 cents. I think my math is correct. On $100, it's $3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that
all of
adds
a
up.
sudden, if you're backing a project, and I don't know if you know who Dawn Mateague is or Mateg,
Rings
and
a bell.
so Dawn is from Canada, and they're doing The Art of Divinica, which is a big
Oh,
book,
okay.
and it's a $65 book. So 3%
Right.
on 65 is a lot more than 3% on $10 or $20.
Right.
And so naturally, it can make a difference, especially if you're backing a lot of Kickstarters that are international or in Canada. I mean, I don't consider Canada to be international per se, but it's this idea that, all of a sudden that it's a big difference, because if you're backing 10 things at $100 a piece, that's $30
Yeah, that's true.
if you're getting it from Canada. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It's just a really good piece of advice for everybody out there. And if you back a lot of Kickstarters, there you go.
Yeah,
Furthermore, there's some other cool stuff, because there's some print combos that you do. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. Something is with you in it. I don't really know. And I don't mean you, I mean more me. And I don't mean me as in me, I mean me, the viewer.
Yeah. Yeah. So
If you want me to be in that print, everybody who backs it, please go right ahead. I'm totally cool with that. That works for me. If you want a picture of me, everybody, absolutely cool with it.
so the intention for that is that it's going to be a poster with all the people that take that reward tier. Their faces will be in that poster. All of them will be in that poster together. And I have a really cool idea for it that I threw at Clovis, and he was like, "This is going to be so much fun." He sent me a sketch. I'm very excited. So like, I can't wait. And I'm going to be in it too. And so is Chuck and Clovis. So yeah, and Mohini as well. So it's going to be fun. I'm very excited.
And if you would like to replace me with yourself, I'm totally cool
I
with
want
that.
everybody in there, man. If I could, I'd do all 100 backers. Like I would just do it in a heartbeat. But
I'm joking.
Clovis has to do all the drawing.
That guy. I know somebody's going to be that guy. That's why I'm joking with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Obviously, you could get both covers of the comics as well, and that's something that's out there. And then obviously, there's a comic shop package, which is cool. So if you're a comic shop and you say, "Hey, I want to take a shot at indie here," that's something to throw out there. And I'm curious actually about this, because what qualifications does somebody need to show to be a comic shop? Because this is something that I have issues with Kickstarter, where it's like, I'm an online eBayer. I sell a lot of comics on eBay, and I don't qualify for half these things. And I'm like, wait a second, like I legitimately can move your books on eBay. And that's my issue with because they say, oh, you need to show proof, but I'm like, I'm selling anywhere from 25 to 50 comics a month on eBay. So I don't really know where that falls in, and it's an irk I have, because I interview all these people too, and it's like,
that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like, in the age of Dogecoin, why can't I just give you my comics? You know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna be real honest and be like, cryptocurrency is worth something, then let me give my comic to whoever I want. What difference does it make?
If I'm willing to buy 10 issues, does it matter that I'm not a brick and mortar comic shop?
Right. Yeah, totally. I'm not a brick and mortar comic maker, like what?
It irks me. It bothers me.
That's a little frustrating.
It bothers me, because I'm like, and I might be getting into the buying wholesale and then selling on eBay, and a lot of people do it from certain retailers. And the way I see it, there's all these online comic shops anyway. Why do I want a brick and mortar store when I can legitimately go purchase a warehouse? And I don't mean rent a warehouse, I mean buy a warehouse and handle it that way. Much more effective.
Yeah, like I kind of have a vision of kind of like moving in that direction where you could take comics into a wholesale sort of scenario. Because like I live in Toronto, so we have a huge comic scene here, like huge. We have the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, which is one of the biggest international indie comic festivals in the world. We also have Fan Expo here, and it's massive. The whole city turns into a completely different place during Fan Expo. It's kind of amazing.
It's like San
And
Diego, essentially.
similar, yeah, very similar, yeah. The pictures I've seen of San Diego, I'm like, oh yeah, it looks just like Toronto. Um, and but the thing is, like comic shops, I've been watching them drop like flies. Like I made friends with a lot of the comic shop owners over the years, and it's just the rent has gone up. It's very difficult to maintain, and the comic business has moved digital. So it's way harder to run a brick and mortar. So like to me, it's like if the brick and mortar shop is starting to phase out in terms of the comic world, why are we, sticking with this legacy format? It doesn't seem to make much sense to me. Especially because like I'm not going to be printing 200 issues of this comic and hoping to, uh, you know, put them in a shop. Like I want like the thing I love about Kickstarter is that I can engage directly with my fan base and give them the comic with like minimal issue.
I can tell you
They
what
get
the
exactly what
future
they
is.
want.
I can tell you what the future is beyond Kickstarter. I did an interview with somebody called Comic Distro, and you basically
Hmm.
give them a non-exclusive license, and it's print to order, essentially for comic
Yeah,
shops. It's a no-brainer. It's a
yeah,
no-brainer, and I could even take it a step further, where instead of the next stage of their business is that it should be that if I'm an eBay seller and I want 50 books, figure out how to get into eBay because all of a sudden, there you go. And then really where it gets exciting is variant covers for me as an eBay seller because that's where I'm going to make my
right.
real money. Where
Totally.
and look, whether I buy the variant or I get some type of discount or something else, and now I have an exclusive variant in my eBay store, brilliant position. But
Yeah,
that's a
totally.
whole different discussion, and that's a whole complicated debate. And whoever figures out how to do it first is going to figure out how to win. And it's
True.
going to be very interesting because that's kind of the direction we're going in anyway, where
Yep.
everything comics as prints are still going to be sold. It's just going to be more online and less in
Hmm.
store.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the real challenge that we're going to face as creators in the future is piracy. And I ran into this when I was thinking about some of the add-ons that I was going to put on my Kickstarter, and Clovis, my artist, created a bunch of animated GIFs of various different panels and frames from the comic, and they look really cool. And I was like, oh, these would make awesome wallpapers, like for your phone or for your computer, because they're animated. They're kind of unique. You don't really get to see that with a comic print. You know what I mean? So I thought it would be a really cool idea. But then I realized I was gonna advertise them. I was gonna show them off on social media, and I realized if I put these up on social media, all someone has to do is just download the image and they get it for free. And I was like, I should just give it away for free. Like that particular thing, I should give away for free. But it started kind of like making me think about what are we gonna do about piracy? If someone can just get my comic digitally and then just give it to all their friends on Dropbox, what
Yeah,
does issue two look like? So it's something I'm not the kind of person that thinks that everybody's a greedy jerk. I just think it's something we have to consider. We have to think about.
yeah, and there's a lot of other stuff, and I briefly want to mention that obviously all Chuck Pino's stuff is also up for grabs.
Yes.
Also, there's some other exclusive stuff out there, and obviously, and also you can pretty much get everything you want. It's like the smorgasbord, and also be an issue too beyond
Yep.
just the raffle, and obviously I think more in a special way as well.
Yep.
And obviously I'm a bit pressed for time.
Yeah.
So
No, it's all good, man.
like 6 minutes left
Yeah.
technically.
No, I really appreciate you doing this, man. It was
No,
uh, it
no,
was a
no,
great
no. We're gonna
conversation.
do this again for issue two, I promise. But anyhow,
Nice.
well, one of the things that I do want to touch briefly on is that obviously Kickstarter, and this is your first Kickstarter. So
Yeah.
how do you feel about Kickstarter, and where do you even think it's going? Because I think we touched upon it a little bit, but obviously Kickstarter is becoming a very interesting platform as an
Well,
entity. And then even to go further, obviously, how do you feel COVID has affected you and even launching this project? Because COVID has fucked up everything.
it really has. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah, we could talk about COVID for an entire other podcast, to be honest with you. But to briefly touch on Kickstarter, to be honest with you, crowdfunding was always, I remember talking about something along these lines decades ago with friends of mine. Like, well, if you make a comic and you create something, why can't you just like find people that like it and get them to support you and kind of like build a following. And they're always like, that'll never work. Who's going to do that? And now someone did it, right? So like, I kind of feel like I do think that this is a brilliant idea. And I also think it's just the beginning. I think things are going to expand from here, and we're going to see things transform in a very like powerful and positive way in the next couple decades for sure. But in terms of COVID, oh my God.
And San Diego's not happening, and a variety of other shit's not happening, and obviously it's been a year without it. I think it's been a good thing for the entire community, because I wasn't doing this, and I started last March 25th,
Right.
2020, March 25th. I started doing this, and it's been good for me in a lot of ways, and I needed a break from conventions. I seriously needed one.
Yeah, I understand that. I think we're going to have a greater appreciation when we get back to it. But I just think in terms of economics, like I was running a business that just basically shut down as a result of this thing. And I got really lucky. So I run a contracting business. So I got super lucky with a referral for a basement renovation. And as soon as I got it, I was like, this is financing the comic. And that was it. And it was like every extra penny that I had went to Clovis while he was doing the art. And I saved every little cent that I got so that I could get this Kickstarter going. And I'm grateful for it. But the plan was always to do this comic.
Well, you should
COVID
be
just made it a
the
little
people
tougher.
that you renovated the basement a comic of this. You should absolutely.
Oh, they're getting one. They're getting one. Yeah, I'm walking right up to their house, knocking on the door, and like mask on and all, just like, thank you so much for your help. This is what you created. And I'm good friends with the guy too. Like we got along quite well. And he's a computer programmer. He's kind of a nerd himself, so I'm sure he'll really enjoy the work.
But and even going further off this, because I don't know how many cons you've been to, and I don't think you've been to any cons as a comic creator.
No, as a fan, definitely though.
But how do you think they need to change? Because I'm a fan panelist, so I have a certain viewpoint on where things need to go and how
Right.
things have to be balanced out. And I'm curious where you view it, because you're a fan. And well, obviously, the most important people at the con are the fans. It's not the celebrities. It's not the
Certainly.
volunteers. It's not the vendors. It's not the comic creators. It's legitimately the people paying the bill. Gordon Ramsay has a very famous position where he asked on Hell's Kitchen. He said, "Who's the most important person in this kitchen?" And he was friends in the dining room, and everybody was pointing to the wrong people. He said, "No, it's the customer."
Yep.
And so when you go to a con, the most important person is the customer. That doesn't mean that's the most wealthiest person. That doesn't mean it's
Right.
raw. That means the most important person, when I am spending money and I bring my $1,000, if my wallet is still heavy when I leave, something's wrong.
Something went wrong. Definitely. Yeah, I can agree with that. I would say like I think this I think the future of conventions is that they get smaller and more focused in terms of style. Does that make sense?
So you want less people there, smaller cons, and more hyper focused on a particular entity and then delivering on that entity. Perfect
Or
example.
even just a genre. You know what I mean? Like you
So
could have a
if
sci-fi convention and you could have a
or you
fantasy
have a Doctor
convention.
Who convention. That's
Yeah,
only
exactly.
Doctor Who. Or you have
Exactly.
an anime fan or MechaCon. I'm a big anime mecha
Right.
fan. So all it is that it's just mecha. It's anything
Yeah,
relating to mecha. That could mean though that you're viewing the human pilots behind the mechas and things like that,
sure.
but it's related specifically to mecha. Or you have
Yeah.
Gundam Con, where all
Yes.
it is Gundam.
Yeah, and I think the advantage, well, even MechaCon, like MechaCon's a great example because, like, just when you said that, I was like, what a great meeting of the minds. Because I was like, you have Gundam, you have Robotech, you have Pacific Rim, you have Evangelion, right? They all fit there. So like, and they're all doing something different in that sort of universe. Uh, with that in mind, like that's a conversation waiting to happen. What I find is frustrating, like the only thing I don't like about having Fan Expo in Toronto, I love the influx of cool people and all the great costumes and stuff. But the last Fan Expo, just a little short story. The last Fan Expo that I went to, that was here. My girlfriend and I went to the aquarium here in the city, and we couldn't look at anything properly because there were all these girls in mermaid outfits that were trying to get photo shoots for their Instagram, and like the city just got taken over by Instagram influencers. And I was like, if there was a way to make this less about the fandom and more about the product and the more about like the excitement of the stories, you know what I mean? Like I love the celebrities when they come to town, but I want to be there for the comics, not just for the people dressed up. The people who dress up, they should be the fans and they should be there to support something. But I feel like the whole thing has become about sort of pageantry. It's like a parade rather than a convention
It,
now.
it,
Do you know
it's
what I mean?
also it's also become that there's too much shit going on. You go to an
Yeah,
Con or a Comic Con. Legitimately, I went to Awesome Con. I used to live in DC, and there's
yeah,
anime stuff going on. There's comic stuff going on. There's Pride Alley going on. You then have regular alley going on. You have
right.
Celebrity Wing. You have Indie Wing, and then you have 15 other things going on. And you have literally 145 panels across multiple sectors. And believe me, I've done a Attack on Titan panel, and then I do gay and lesbian comic history. So you tell me, as a, and what's crazy
Like in
about
the
that is I'm
same
a,
room, right?
it,
Like
it,
it's
it,
like
it's like three rooms
what?
down, which is insane. And it's
Sure,
this
right.
idea though that you have this concept where and I'm not bashing either of those panels. I don't
No,
want
sure, but like why are they under the same umbrella, right? Like that doesn't make sense. Why can't they have the two different parties happening in the same neighborhood?
what my problem with it is that you have that's a wide spectrum to
Yeah,
it is a wide spectrum to cover, and there's nothing wrong with having both of those things at a con, and they hit two different audiences. And as a
right,
panelist, I'm great because I'm growing my brand. And it's
right.
funny because I'm a straight white heterosexual male doing a gay lesbian comic history panel. But go figure me out. But
Right.
anyway, what's crazy about that to me though is that these are on opposite sides, and these are in maybe they're not on opposite sides, but they are in different corners per se. And now you have a con
Well,
where
they don't mesh right. You know what I mean? Like they don't mesh naturally the way that like when you were talking about MechaCon, like Evangelion and Robotech are not necessarily doing the same thing, but they fit together in a way that means that they belong in the same room. That was the thing about Fan Expo that I found confusing was like, why does all this stuff have to be under the same umbrella? We could do
it's too
multiple different
general.
conventions. Right.
That's the point I'm trying to make is that it's too general. And then you have
Yes.
legitly you have Elias Chazudis doing commissions for Zenoscope. Not he's a Zenoscope artist and he does a lot of indie stuff and he does a lot of big work and he's a good artist and he's
Yeah.
fantastic. And he but and that's great in Artist Alley. But then you have Will Friedle from Boy Meets World and Celebrity Aisle. And Will Friedle, technically, he's Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. That show, in case you didn't
Sure.
know. But even still, though, it's Celebrity Wing. And so you have so many different draws at a con, it becomes very complicated. And given what would I hope for with out of COVID is that things are going to get way more specific and get way more narrowed down. And they're only going to
Yeah.
track maybe 3,000 fans, but those 3,000 fans are going to be there for a specific reason, and they're going to
Yeah.
spend more money because they're there for a reason. Like MechaCon's a great example of that.
Yeah. And most importantly, when that happens, like when things get smaller and a little less nebulous, a little more specific, it means that I, as a creator at my table, can directly engage with people rather than this like mass of bodies just passing by and like all I am is scenery, right? Now they're there to experience the thing rather than just like it felt like I felt like I was watching cattle pass through a slaughterhouse. You know what I mean? Like it just felt and it just felt a little too industrial, you know?
It's weird where I mean I know my audience and my favorite thing at a con, it's only happened once and it's the best thing I've ever done, is I had a Gundam panel right in front of my Attack on Titan panel because I did such a good job with my Gundam panel. I convinced people to stay for the Attack on Titan. They're like, I'm glad I stayed.
Brilliant.
And also what was nice is that Attack on Titan panel was going to sell out. And I said to everybody before I began my Gundam panel, I said, hey, you leave this room, you're not coming back in. And I was
Right.
100% right, and about 40 people stayed out of the 60 or 70 that were in that Gundam panel. And I said, guys, just everybody start moving up because this is the panel tonight. And I was sort of right. I was sort of right. And I made sure,
Nice.
and I held the room for about 45 minutes of I could have dropped a pin in a large conference room in the Javits Center. And everybody's eyes were on me for 45 minutes. We were like, it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. And then
Yeah, that's
apparently
amazing.
after I went back to Westchester, New York, after that out of New York City, so I used to live there too. And
Hmm.
apparently I got pretty close to picking up a girl using Brock Lesnar as a pickup line, but that's a different discussion. Different discussion completely for a whole different day. And on that note, before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to let you self promote because I got 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes before
Yeah,
my
that's
next
right.
one.
Yeah, we
So
got to wrap this up. No worries, man.
self
I really
promoting.
appreciate it.
Where can people find the Kickstarter? Where can people bother you on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? Obviously, where can people back this? As I already stated, the
Yep.
Kickstarter, and anything else that's relevant to this project
Yeah,
before
you
I
got
get
it.
you and me in trouble.
Yeah, no problem, man. The comic is called Apex. Issue number one is on Kickstarter right now. It's a 25-page sci-fi noir in the ghetto of the future. Yeah, you can find it on Kickstarter. You can also find me on Facebook, and I never shut the fuck up about it right now because obviously I'm in the middle of it. So you can find me on Facebook as Ben Cook. You can also find me with my band Pioneer Anomaly. We're on Spotify. The music is in the video for the teaser video for the Apex campaign. We also had our music featured in the Belial #2 campaign. That was another
Oh, I hate that
Bonfire
book.
Press
That's
comic.
just a horrific book. God. We can't talk about that book.
Okay, that's
Chuck knows
fine.
I'm going to say that too. It's okay, Chuck.
I'm sure.
You're
Yeah,
my
yeah.
bag.
He's giving his own phone the finger right now, I swear. But yeah, so yeah, you can find me on Facebook as Ben Cook. You can find Pioneer Anomaly on Spotify, on Instagram, Pioneer Anomaly, and Mohini.eats. That's MOHINI.EATS. That's the Apex Instagram handle, and I'll be pushing that probably in the foreseeable future until Apex no longer exists, which hopefully is never.
And it's also in the link up above everybody. So you could click that link and it'll bring you right to it. So that's also important as well. And on that note, and I've been saying it again, you have to support indie. Indie is super important to check out, support. Best way to do it is Kickstarter right now. And I think that's the best way for the time being. And then eventually, I'm assuming you're going to have a few extra issues left over that will
That's the
be for
plan.
sale somewhere. And obviously, if you miss the Kickstarter and you don't back it, you should obviously do that. First 100 raffle. So three of you are going to be chosen to be in that book in some way or another. I'm sure you're going to
That's
contact
right.
those three. So that's something to keep in mind as well, where you can be one of the lucky three. You have a 3% chance, 3%. So
Or you can pay a higher tier and you can get in there directly. That's also an option.
that's also an option. So that just keep that in mind. But let's say that you are in a tougher position right now because money's tight. Let's be realistic. COVID has messed
Yep.
up a lot of people. And well, make sure that your wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, dog, cat, goldfish, your kids are okay. And kidding aside about the goldfish, but make sure that your pets are okay. Make sure your kids are okay. Make sure your spouse or your significant other is okay. Make sure your rent and your mortgage is paid for, because if you don't, I guarantee you it's going to bite you in the ass in the next 6 to 8 months. And also make sure that you got food, water, shelter on your plate as well. And make sure that you're good for the next month, because things are not going to be coming back so quickly. It's not like flipping a light switch. And not saying I think we're turning the corner in the world, but things are going to be tough for a little bit longer. So please don't go into debt for this project. And whether people like me or not for saying that, make sure you are financially stable before you back something. And if you are in that circumstance, best thing you could do is follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and share it, because you might be in a rough position, but somebody who you share it with might not be, and somebody might not know it even exists. And now they do know it exists.
Yeah.
Or better yet, share this interview as well, because that also helps tremendously, because this interview has the link in it. And somebody might be like, oh, this is super interesting. I'm really curious as to where it's going. So obviously, and social media is free. So that's something to keep in mind. And you could pick one
honestly,
or all three of those things.
I don't even worry. Like, if you can't financially support, I hold no ill will. I'm not like, if you can support in any way, tell people about this project. That's all I ask, because it has potential. I see it. Other people see it. And if you can't throw some cash at it, I understand. I've been there. I've had friends that I couldn't support financially, but I shared their campaign. That's the best I could do, you know. And
And so
I totally am grateful for people when they do that.
and so on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Okay, is it just one word?
Oh, you could have like a minute or two or
Sure,
three.
sure. I just want to say, in similar fashion to what I'm talking about in my comic, COVID hasn't created problems; it's exposed problems, and our responsibility is to adapt and learn how to thrive in the circumstances we find ourselves in the environment we find ourselves in, and don't eat people.
That's a good motto. Don't eat people. It might be tasty, but just don't eat them.
They might be tasty. I never want to find out.
Well, one day, one day.
Maybe one day.
Don't worry, don't worry. I know a good lawyer. We'll figure it out. And on that note, I think that's the end of it. Before we go any further,
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
oh, thank you for being on. And then now we're officially done.
Awesome.